another edition of the BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast. Ash Wednesday edition here, post NFL Combine. I got the ashes on my forehead right here. That's about as much religion as I want to get into it with these guys right here. Mike Gross, Frank Proday, joining you along for the ride. All right, guys, what are you working on right now?
Well, I actually was looking at some of the Combine stuff. I think I'm going to write about that for Sunday. Other than that, it's been a ton of hoops for me. Lots of local college and high schools, and so yeah, I've been actually covering a lot of games, going to a lot of games.
Love it, love it.
We had some Combine work last week, but it really fizzled out as far as Penn State was concerned. I know we'll probably get into that, but also Penn State wrestling for me. So Big Ten championships coming up this weekend. So writing about previewing that. Penn State's top recruits from this class are winning, state titles in high school throughout the world. And NCAA championships coming up. And it's a big deal because Penn State is going to go probably on a historic postseason run.
Absolutely. Little drop in preview. It's a big week in PIAA. High school wrestling, right? Finals this week. I mean,
yeah, the finals are this week, and we have a lot of kids involved with that. I'm not involved in the coverage of that, but we will be all over that. Our company, our paper will be all over that.
Frank, you're going to be there, right? At Giant Center?
I will not be at the Giant Center, but I will be gearing up for Philadelphia for the NCAAs in a couple of weeks. So that'll be.
You're going to that, aren't you, Frank?
Yes, I am going to Philadelphia for 4 days.
That's awesome. So, I love the PIAA tournament. I think it was, in terms of high school events, covering it, for me, it was my favorite event to cover on the high school circuit, and nationals in Philadelphia. The Nittany Lion Club point totals that you needed to get tickets through Penn State, sky high. Even if you're a longtime season ticket holder, it was very tough to get tickets to the national championships in Philly. But before we get into all the work stuff, what are you guys doing for fun right now? With a little bit, I guess that we could call this a little bit of a lull, but then it's right back into it, especially for you, Frank, with the NCAA and Big Tens coming up.
Yeah, we played my cello a little bit last weekend down at Nixon Park in York County for their Sugar Mapling Days. If there is, I think that's what that Sugar Maple Festival, something like that. Yeah, so it was pretty cool. Took in some of the Lancaster County yesterday for on my wife's birthday. Saw a tremendous gathering of snow geese on a small little pond in Lancaster. I'm not sure that you could fit any more on the pond.
Was it a Middle Creek, Frank?
No, a small little pond. This is right off the Centerville Road exit.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, so there is probably, I don't know, 1,000 of these guys and girls crammed in there, taking off, landing. So, yeah.
Probably multiple genders, I would think.
Nice day yesterday. So,
Middle Creek, that's the place to go. If you're a Penn State fan, you're listening to this podcast, Middle Creek Wildlife Habitat Refuge. I'm drawing a blank.
Might be in your full name.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good in London County, come to think of it.
Yeah.
It's right on the border there. As me living on the far reaches of Lancaster County, it's only a 10-minute drive for me to get to Middle Creek. So that's good. I also want to, as we're talking about Penn State wrestling coming up here with a couple big Big Ten tournaments, a lot of big matches in the lineup in the national championship as Penn State gets ready to go on a historic run. Don't forget to go back and listen to the conversation that we had here on the BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast with Jeff Byers, Penn State's play-by-play man. Ironhead was fantastic, gave us a complete rundown of the lineup, why he thinks this Penn State team is going to be the greatest of all time, and why people, I suggested that some people think they come in and break up Penn State. The Justice Department breaks up the monopoly on the wrestling scene in college, why he says other schools have to pick it up, and we pretty much all agree on that. Penn State community suffered a big loss. Longtime Penn State historian and great person Lou Prato passed away last week. Lou is phenomenal. Welcome everybody to the beat, guys. What stories and memories do you have of your time with Lou?
Well, I don't really. I knew you were I knew we were gonna talk about this, so I can't really remember any specific stories, but I just remember it was so interesting that Lou was sort of a mentor slash fan of us more than, I mean, he was a Penn State guy through and through and an alumnus and all that, but he sort of was I sort of thought of him as a presence sort of hovering over the beat a little bit. And he was such a good source of information if you were doing anything about Penn State history. Certainly, I wrote an involved piece one time about a guy from Lancaster, Barney Ewell, who was a Penn State alumnus who was at one point the fastest man in the world. And he didn't quite, he won an Olympic gold medal, an Olympic silver medal, and some of his stuff was in the Penn State Museum. A lot of it was with other people. It was a whole involved thing about how his stuff got away from his family in a bit. But anyway, so I remember Lou letting me in the museum when it wasn't open to look at the Barney Ewell stuff, including an Olympic silver medal, which they had, which is on display at the museum. And I also remember one time when we were at St. Elmo's, Frank, it was a group of us, about 10 of us, and we had our own room at St. Elmo's. And I believe Lou had a cocktail or two before we started the dinner. And he was very talkative, very effusive. And he was talking about interviewing Willie Mays and going to the Polo Grounds and Joe DiMaggio. And he was really on a roll. So, yeah, I really liked Lou. And I think the thing about Lou is he liked all of us. He's so related to what we were trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I just think he was a friend to everybody on the Penn State beat. I mean, if you needed anything history related, and I wrote several stories where I went to Lou at some point, but he was always happy to help and to talk. And you could tell that he loved what he lived, as far as Penn State history and his background in journalism and teaching. That came through. And I did a story once on the only former Penn State football player who was missing in action, who was eventually KIA. But Lou is a help because I was trying to figure out Penn State football military service through the wars. And of course, Lou took that upon himself and was digging through World War I, World War II, coming up with names of people, to the point where, this guy played in early 50s with Joe Paterno, and Lou was going way back before that. So, I mean, but he was always there. And, unfortunately, the last time I got to speak with him, I think, was probably on Media Day back in August, where he came. It was raining. We had to park way. They had us parking way out away from. And Lou was pulling up and kind of laughing, but kind of not, saying, "What the hell are they doing making us park all the way over here?" So, yeah,
he was as loyal as he was to Penn State and as true blue Nittany Lion as he was. He was not afraid to criticize Penn State, but stuff like that, and things that were going on in the university. Mostly he did that just private, just talking with us, but that was a piece of what he was about too. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he was always honest. And I met Lou back in 2006. I was a sophomore at Syracuse, and I met him at the Notre Dame game. My dad introduced me to him. And I do remember my dad and him had a relationship a little bit before that. And I remember my dad was so excited to see him on Interstate 80 going through a toll booth. Him and Lou were like yelling to each other, talking about the game as we were driving back from the Penn State Notre Dame game in 2006. So that's like my first introduction. And then I took my job in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I got offered a job up in State College. And I called Lou right away, and Lou was like, "Oh no, take that job. It'll be a good one for you." So I ended up doing that. And I remember coming into Media Day, and him and Fran Fisher were sitting in 2012, my first Penn State Media Day. They were sitting next to each other in the back, and I snapped a picture of it. And it's just something that I've always remembered. And those were two large presences just sitting in that first row in the back where the stadium seating is in the media room. And I remember that. And on this podcast throughout the Penn State football season, there were often times where I'd be texting them as I was having the conversation with you guys to fact check something about it. And one of them was when we were talking about the Cotton Bowl against SMU. I was texting Lou, making sure I had all my facts right before coming on here. And he was still texting me as we were going through the podcast. I mean, he was a wonderful guy. He was very good friends with my dad and his wife, Carol. They always had a fun tailgate, which was right on the west side of the stadium. And he was just super, super guy. Always loved interviewing him. Always made sure he got, and he was great. He was a TV professor. He's done everything in TV that you could possibly imagine. Mentored some of the greatest ones in America today. And when he would talk, he always made sure he talked that his soundbite couldn't be cut and edited very easily. So you had to always have the full soundbite and the story.
There you go.
And I will always love that about him. Love Lou Prato.
Sweet.
Tremendous loss for the university, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the family.
87 years old. He was.
Yep. Talking a little bit about Penn State football, we got to talk about that. The combine. We always think Penn State players are going to perform at an elite level at the combine, and you're just waiting for these guys to jump off the page. This year, it wasn't like that because only one Penn State player performed, Jalen Reed, and he did very well. So, guys, let's ask this question first. Were you surprised at so many opt-outs at the combine for Penn State?
Yeah, I wrote more stories, preview stories that never ran, anticipating guys working out. I mean, I guess Abdul Carter, we kind of maybe could see coming because of his injury that we knew about, not the one we didn't. But the other guys, I don't know. I guess I don't really understand. I mean, none of us really know the conversations going on between them and their agents and maybe what NFL's personnel are thinking, right? We don't know that. But I personally was even a little surprised that Tyler Warren didn't test because I thought he's a guy that's going to be a day one pick, but he seems to be trending possibly toward the top 10. So I'm thinking he's a great athlete, right? For his size. Couldn't he help himself by, if he's healthy, doing the testing and such? So to me, I was a little surprised by that. And I thought Kobe King probably had something to gain from testing. So I think, what did he do? One or two things, and that was it. I don't know.
Warren surprised me until I started looking at how well regarded he is. I see a lot of people picking him to go in the top 10. I see number 7 to the Jets. I mean, when you realize that he's that highly regarded, then you think, well, okay, maybe it was smart not to mess with it and not to do anything at the combine. Before seeing that, I had exactly the same thought that Frank did. This guy could probably help himself because he's incredibly athletic. And Jalen Reed is a guy that I thought of as being maybe more productive than he was super elite athletic. So I think he surprised himself a little bit by running a sub 4.5, and he probably helped himself a little bit. Yeah. And the other guy is Winston, KJ Winston, who I think is going to go probably a middle roundish guy. And because of his injury situation, he might be a sleeper because I thought he was just I thought he was going to be one of their best players this year. And we'll see. But yeah, it was not spectacular in terms of it was not like a shining testament to Penn State's player development, which a couple recent combines kind of have been. It was a little surprising that we didn't see more. But again, a little surprising how highly regarded a couple of these guys are.
Well, and look at it this way. Now Penn State's Pro Day on March 28th maybe gets a little more buzz if Abdul Carter does perform. Does KJ Winston possibly even do some work? I mean, people are going to be looking. I mean, could be the biggest Pro Day since Drew Hartlob tore up the carpet a few years ago up there with that sub 4.2 or whatever the heck he ran.
Okay. It does make the Penn State Pro Day a little bit more intriguing. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I was surprised King didn't. I'm not shocked Tyler Warren didn't. I thought he would participate, especially at least in like vertical jump and the show like kind of like explosiveness there. Not shocked he didn't do the 40 being the way he's trending, but I really thought Kobe King would participate. I thought he had a chance to maybe make an impression. And of course, with the track record of Penn State strength and conditioning program from going back to Dwight Galt when he got here, Greg Fitzgerald, I just thought Penn State's done very well recently. And I thought Kobe King would just continue that trend of doing well. Jalen Reed, obviously, he did well. Impressed with his 19 reps at 225 on the bench press and also his sub 4.540. So he definitely made himself some money. Jason Kabinda, that was the first thing he tweeted out. Jalen Reed just made himself some money, and that's what the combine's all about. So let me jog your memory, guys. What's the most memorable combine performance that you guys remember as you're covering Penn State?
Well, I remember Deion Sanders going off on Troy Apke running that crazy 40, man. That's
right. That was funny. Yeah.
And then I think that really helped Troy, right? I mean, he got drafted way higher than the two guys that got drafted that had names that got drafted higher than I would have thought would. And the first names that come to me are Troy Apke and then Sean Clifford, because I think people did not expect either of them in recent times here, either of them to go as high as they did. So,
well, I remember that one combine when I think it was Micah, and who's I'm drawing a blank of the guy's name. The guy, the DN for the Ravens,
Jason Owen.
Yeah. Those guys. I just think when we talk about the combine being sort of a testament to the player development, I just remember the NFL media, everybody, not Penn State people, were just sort of blown away by how athletic these guys were and what freakish performances they were putting on. And I remember a lot of people saying Penn State must be doing something right in terms of development. Hat tip to Dwight Gold, who we've had on the show. So that's the one that I remember, just for people being blown away by that. I think I was up at Hershey at the state basketball and following it on my computer and like, holy crap, these guys. And that was the reaction, I think, around the football world a little bit. It was kind of eye-opening for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was great. The Troy Apke one with the whole interaction between the NFL crew and Deion Sanders he could run. You're asking, what do you mean, Deion? You know what I mean. It's just funny, that whole thing. For me, I've only covered one combine in person, and it was Saquon Barkley, Mike Gesicki, Jason Kabinda's, and it was a sight to be seen, just the way it was and the way the whole setup was. And I think that's when the combine really started to like integrate the fans into it, where they had the bench press and it was out there in public, and just Saquon walking through in the presence that he commanded. I remember shouting to him, I'm like, hey, Saquon, are you going to take in the women's basketball game, the Penn State women's basketball game later on tonight? And he just smiled. He's like, I think I'll be kind of busy as he was walking past me. But the amount of people that were just down there around him, and then Mike Gesicki standing up at the podium, and he has this big smile on his face. And I ended up getting ripped by some reporter, because all these people have, in my opinion, like out there off the wall questions. Some people would call them dumb. Like the dumbest thing you could possibly ask these guys at an NFL combine. And I just asked Mike Gesicki, because we've talked about it here regarding Tyler Warren when we've made the comparison. And I talked about it with Mike when he was at Penn State about his volleyball background helping him as a tight end. So I asked Mike Gesicki about that, and then followed up with the struggles that he had I believe it was his sophomore year at Penn State. Remember, he couldn't catch a cold? Mm-hmm. He couldn't catch a cold. And how he came back from that. And I remember some guy like ripping me on Twitter because I asked about how his struggles made him a better football player, but yet he was still being asked about all his volleyball stuff by multiple people. Like, how does this volleyball help you as an NFL tight end? And here I'm asking about, because he would always be out on the jugs field outside of Luba on the jugs machine, catching balls after those struggles. And then he becomes one of the best hands tight end in the country. So it's just a wild experience. That's one combine that I remember, and just the way those guys performed. I think Gesicki, in my notes here, did a 41.5-inch vertical jump. Saquon did a 41 vert, 29 reps for Saquon at 225, 22 reps really impressed for Gesicki with his long body and everything like that. And 10-9 broad jump. I mean, that was for me when Penn State really started to stand out with the strength and conditioning program and put the nation on notice.
I remember I did a story about Nick Scott when he got drafted and went to the Rams, and he ended up getting a Super Bowl ring with the Rams. But anyway, he told me that he was out in California working out with whoever he was working out with. He was not at the combine, and he was watching it on TV, and the D-backs were going through their drills, and he gets a phone call, and it's the Rams special teams coach. And he says, "Why the hell are you not here? I'm sitting here in the bleachers. Why are you not here?" And Nick said, "Well, I don't know, man. They didn't invite me." And then he said, "Well, you know what? I think there's a really good chance that we're going to have a spot in the 7th round where we're going to draft you." And he practically told him, "We're going to draft you." And that's when he went in the 7th round, and he ended up making the team and having a career in the NFL. But that's one thing I remember about a guy who was not at the combine, and it wasn't his choice.
Nick Scott, all around great guy. If you're coming up with Penn State players to put on like an all humanitarian list and just great people, he is a phenomenal person. Love Nick Scott. Really, really fun guy to cover. Frank, any extras on the combine? Any other thoughts from you on the combine?
I'd love to participate in it in my younger days, but no, I don't really have any because the combine is not, I don't know, it's not as exciting to me as it is to some, I think. I don't get revved up about it, but what I am impressed with is what Mike touched on is I think there is no bigger selling point, however, for Penn State strength and conditioning staff, because I think they've made their name off this event to some degree.
Yeah.
Their respect off of the way that their guys trend. Another reason why it was a little, and maybe this is just the way, I think maybe this is the way the combine is going lately. You know, another reason why it surprised me that so few Penn State guys did anything last week is because they're typically so good at this. You know, they help themselves.
Yeah.
And now it just seems, it makes me wonder if this is, I don't want to say being phased out, but if just the top guys aren't doing it anymore.
There's less emphasis on it than it used to be.
Yeah.
I think going back, let's say 5 years ago, it was a much bigger deal in the perception of most of the teams. I think the NFL teams, it's a less big deal than it used to be.
Right.
Yeah. So I think you guys, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
No, I think you guys nailed it because it's just a progression of things. Like first it's bowl games you're opting out of. Then it's more so into the combine. We've just seen things. A season opt-outs came after COVID. It's just along those lines of progression as kids are saying what's best for me, and we don't have to do things, and teams are just de-emphasizing it across the board. Running backs, they're not de-emphasized anymore in the NFL. Saquon Barkley gets a massive contract extension from the Philadelphia Eagles. Is it safe to say Saquon Barkley, with some help from other guys, has now totally changed the way the NFL now looks at running backs in this modern era? Because for a while, just a couple years ago, they were being de-emphasized, and there was like a running back, conference where all the top guys got together and was like, we're losing our value. Has Saquon Barkley reversed that trend?
Well, I don't think so, because he is not quite a unicorn, but close to it. He's unique. He's unique in that you can get explosive plays and touchdowns, 60-yard touchdowns out of your normal running game, which that hasn't existed in the NFL for a long time. I think there are 3 guys in the league who are really, when they're healthy, a cut above everybody else, huge offensive weapons. And I'm talking about Saquon and Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey. Those 3 guys, if you think you can get another one of those guys, if you think you can get all the things that those guys bring to the table, then I think you are going to pay. I think in that sense, the super elite guys, they're going to start to get paid again, but there aren't many of those.
Right. I mean, and the thing that maybe surprises me is Saquon was unlike any other Penn State football athlete, running back, player I've covered since 1994. I didn't really expect with the start of his NFL career that he would actually at any point look like he did at Penn State on the NFL level. And he did that. And I mean, didn't even do it right away, did it after being in the league for a half a dozen years. And I just don't, I mean, when is the last time you can get a player doing that? So I agree with Mike the Eagles, man, did they tap into something at the right moment, at the right time, at the right place? But where is else? I'm a Steelers fan. What has their running back situation been like forever? I mean, it's almost as bad as quarterbacks. And you would think you could find a bell cow running back. Okay, Saquon is just different. So pay him like he's different.
He's different, and when the Eagles find guys like that, they do pay him. That's
exactly.
And they keep trying to get better. Exhibit A, they're apparently trying to get Myles Garrett right now. So the Eagles are all in on it, man.
Howie Roseman has had some difficult drafts, especially when it comes to wide receivers and evaluating talent. But man, he is a wizard when it comes to finding value via trades and getting guys in that roster to make a difference. This deal, 2 years, $41.2 million, $36 million guaranteed, and can earn an additional $15 million. He's going to get another contract. Like, it's 2 years. There's going to be another contract after this, which is just insane. And the thing, when he went to the Giants, he was criticized by everybody at the Giants. Tiki Barber was slamming him for his pass protection and everything else. And we saw that he was always committed to it when he was at Penn State. Had to get better at it at the NFL. And then the quotes from the Giants GM and their ownership about losing sleep, it's never going to go away. I love it. I'm not even an Eagles fan, and I just love watching it over and over again. Just how
that's going to be. I mean, that's going to be New York talk show fodder for people who want to gripe about the Giants for years and years to come. Yeah, that's
if James Franklin, Frank, tell me if I'm wrong. If James Franklin said something like that in a press conference, and a year later it turned out to be absolutely terribly gone wrong, like say James missed on whatever he was saying, and put out the product that the Giants are putting out at the NFL, would James Franklin have a job like the GM of the Giants still has a job? I say no. I would say no.
Oh, what a hypothetical.
I don't know what the Giants are doing. How do you allow that to happen?
I guess you certainly get more of a pass in the NFL. I mean, because I don't know, at least to me, there's so much parity. I mean, the expectations are they want you need to be a winner, but the reality is you don't have a leg up like you do in college football, or 4 legs up like you do if you're Penn State compared to like Kent State. I mean, so I don't know. The expectations, I think, are a little different. I mean,
you have to remember that the 32nd best, the worst team in the NFL is the 32nd best football team in the world. I mean, the difference between top to bottom in that is a lot bigger. Is a lot smaller than, as Frank said, between Penn State and Kent State.
If James would have had those issues at the beginning of his time at Penn State, I think things could have gone. There was a time where things could have gone wrong, and he could have been subject to being out the door earlier. I mean, I guess it's 2 ways. I mean, I think he was getting a cushion because he came in during the aftermath of the sanctions, but yet at the same time, how much of that was going to be there if he, things just went
go 2-10. If you go 2-10,
things went really wrong right away. He survived the COVID stuff fine.
Yeah.
But you go 0-5 in his second year.
It's fun to have these hypotheticals, though, aren't they? Just throwing a random hypothetical out there.
Absolutely. We love the hypotheticals.
When you have an 11-year-old saying draft Jaden Daniels and you decide not to, and you go with Daniel Jones, who gets sniped by the turf monster running down for a touchdown, and then, he's cut. Just fun.
One thing we've been talking, number 3 pick, what are they going to do?
Yeah, exactly. One number moving on, final topic. We said we were going to talk about this. Pat Kraft's press conference. A lot of stuff came out of that. I mean, he's asked about volleyball head coach, had a great answer to that, and it was really all encompassing press conference about what's going on. What did you guys learn from Pat Kraft's press conference last week?
Well, I thought he was good. I thought he had a lot to say about everything, and it was substantial stuff. It wasn't just, there was some just gushing about how great Penn State is, but there was some substantial stuff and talking about how this revenue sharing is going to change everything, which I still don't completely understand, but I understand it better from having listened to him talk about it. And, Penn State is going to get $20.5 million from revenue sharing as a result of this litigation. And how are they going to use it? And that kind of stuff. And the vast majority of that is going to go to football. We know that. Maybe even a greater percentage is going to go to football than at some of the other places that Penn State is competing with. So that was the big thing. And then talking about the GM, which is the question that I asked him about, the general manager, possibly having a general manager in football, and then him talking about how some schools, the GM is essentially Howie Roseman. Essentially, he's building the team, and more so than the football coach, which I didn't realize that. And I of course, he's not going to get specific about that, but that was a little bit eye-opening to me.
Yeah, I think if you're a Penn State fan listening to Pat talk, you just got reinforced that we're all in. I mean, we're going to spend what it takes, and we should do that. And it's no problem to do that. And if Cale Sanderson needed $100 million, I'd go find him $100 million. But Cale, Pat said he doesn't need $100 million. But Pat, the way Pat talk, he's not measuring his words. He's just kind of saying, not like off the cuff. I mean, it's well spoken, but he's just giving you his thoughts. Like he basically said, yeah, Penn State's probably going to try to get another receiver in the transfer portal. And I'm not sure James Franklin wonder what James Franklin thought of him saying that. That was kind of fun. Like, did Pat just say that Penn State, like everybody knows we still need another receiver and we're still going to try to get one in the transfer portal in April? So yeah, he was good on a variety of topics. And I think they need to make him available to us like 3-4 times a year, not once a year or whatever it is. Why would you not have a guy who speaks so well, promotes yourself, and does it in a way that's actually entertaining and a little bit enlightening? Why would you not put him out there more often?
He's a good talker, and you're right, Frankie. Sometimes he kind of, it's not that he's inarticulate. He's very articulate, but he starts talking, and then he sort of figures out what he's saying while he's talking and what direction he wants to go with it a little bit. Yeah, I have a very positive impression. And you talk about reinforcing that they're all in. I thought the way he talked about the Jim Knowles hire was really drove that home, where he was like, you know what, that's how much it costs, and we're going to get the best guys that exist, and that's what it costs. So that's what we're paying.
That's still new to Penn State fans. I don't care if you've hired these 3 guys or 4 guys or 3 years or what. That is still, Penn State fans are still like catching themselves, I think, on this.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they almost need to be told again and again. Like, this isn't a one-time. We just didn't luck into like Jim Knowles being on sale, okay, at Walmart this week. Okay, we got him because we paid everything we wanted to. It wasn't a lucky thing.
Jim Knowles was not a blue light special.
No. I thought he was. I thought I saw him at the going out of business sale for Joanne's.
Yeah,
like at the local.
You did not
come up outside. Like, no, right? Okay, that was it. No, you're right though. But Pat is very smooth when he talks. Very engaging. Mm-hmm. It's so unlike the previous 2. I wasn't around for Tim Curley. But it's so unlike the previous 2 athletic directors that took place, because I remember some bad ones under Sandy. I feel comfortable saying this, being that James has backed the bus over Sandy multiple times when you talk about alignment. And I'll keep going back to like what was said the last game of the season. from the board of trustees all the way down to the football coach and all the other coaches being perfectly aligned. Dave Joyner, when he was doing the coaching search post Bill O'Brien, kind of put his foot in his mouth when he kept saying, oh, it's going to be a robust search. There were all these buzzwords, like corporate buzzwords. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. And then he put a 2-week timeline on it. And then the 2-week timeline came and it was like, what's going on? What's going on? People are panicking. Like, he backed himself into a corner. I don't think Pat Kraft is one of those people. Like, he's very direct, doesn't make bad statements, keeps all the doors open, and he's going after it. And he's the guy that you have to be unleashed to go after it. Because if he doesn't want to do it, then James Franklin can't do it either. Mike Rhodes won't be able to do it. Mike Rhodes needs that practice facility for the basketball program to really bring in recruits, whether it's $25 million, $27 million. That has to happen if Penn State's going to become a every other year player in the NCAA tournament. Basketball needs it. Hockey, they've been able to do it. Guy Godowski is doing a great job, and I think if Guy went and said, this is what I need to be able to compete at a higher level, I know hockey's a little bit different, it'll take place. Because that's, I think, the personality that Pat Kraft has.
So Sandy I thought Sandy was very articulate and she liked to talk, but it's just a different environment right now. And people beyond the athletic director are all in a way that probably didn't exist under her tenure, however much blame you get for that. She probably was not as good a fundraiser as Kraft is, but I don't know that. That's just my sense of it.
Good point. Good point on that. And the fundraiser is a big thing. And she did.
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah, huge. Monumentous. Guys, is there anything we left off the table?
No, I don't think so. I am looking forward to Proday, even if I might not be able to be there because that's state basketball, but I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a little more interesting than it usually is, I think.
Yeah. Looking forward to it as well. I'm looking forward because hopefully you guys are all there and I get to see y'all in person, see all your smiles. You know, me, I'm an aging person. I'll be putting smiles on your face and everything when I walk through the door. So,
you will.
All right. I guess with that, it's time to cue the music. Don't forget, reach out to BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast at gmail.com. And make sure you're following Mike and Frank on the social media pages. Week for Frank at YDR Penn State and Mike at LNP. Guys, it's been real, it's been fun, and we will do it again in 7 to 10 days as we work through the offseason of Penn State football. And mind you, to all the listeners out there, we are going to get some breakdowns by position groups as we inch closer to the blue-white game here. Little spring previews for the upcoming off season. For Frank, Mike, I'm Andrew. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.